What's going on, people? After a much needed break last week where we skipped over Dungeons and Dragons and Tetris, unfortunately, we are back with sort of another double feature. Not exactly. We're here to talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie, possibly the biggest surprise of the year, and without any hope, the first big budget success of the year. I'm here once again, joined by Luke of Luke Reviews. Luke, you got anything to say before we get this started?
Only one thing. That's a wahoo!
That, all of that and more on today's episode of the Talk TV podcast. What is going on, guys? Happy Sunday morning. We are here to talk about something that, of course, naturally, just given the state of what it was going to drum up controversy, which I'm like, okay, like we're just at the point now where anything can drum up controversy. The Super Mario Brothers movie. This film has been quite anticipated for a little bit now. It was, delayed several times so that it could, get to that precious weekend spot where it would have relatively little competition. They managed to land it there on the first weekend of April. Chris, this movie is an adaptation of the extremely popular one of Nintendo's original icons, Mario himself. The film has an all-star cast featuring the likes of, count it down with me, Luke, Chris Pratt as Mario, Charlie Day as Luigi, Jack Black as Bowser, Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach, Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, to name just a few. And Luke, I think it's no secret that video game movies have had a little bit of a rough patch when it comes to adapting them for the big screen. But before we get into this movie, I just wanted to ask, what's your stance on video game movies in general? Do you think that they have, why do you think they've had such a hard time in the past? I know this is something that I've talked with Chris about in the past before. Why do you think they've had such a hard time at being adapted to the big screen? And also, do you think that they have finally cracked the code as far as how to do good video game movies?
I think something about adapting the video games that's so hard is that when you're playing the games, you are the one moving the story forward, so to say. So you are already immersed into whatever world you're in, or just a simple multiplayer or whatever. You are already there, and the movie has to take the controller away from you. And I think to fill that gap is what the biggest challenge is. But like you said, in recent years, there's been a sort of an uptick. But I think, as we've spoken before on our Ambulance podcast, the best video game movies are often the ones that aren't quite video game movies. Like last year, Ambulance, we thought that was a GTA 5 adaptation of sorts. Maybe Free Guy is a GTA 5 adaptation of sorts. When I was watching Avatar: The Way of Water, I'm like, give me the controller. Like, I want to get these quick time events going. But no, recently I think The Last of Us is probably the big one that might shift the conversation or the approach to these kind of things. If you put enough care into it, cast the right actors, get the right writers into it, then you can really have something special. Even last week, Tetris. That's a video game movie. I'm calling it that. And it's one of the better ones. And Super Mario, it's an Illumination-made Mario movie. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I will definitely say that Tetris, in terms of like how they incorporated the video game elements of that, I thought were pretty cool just in general, especially with the graphics and stuff. Yeah, it's crazy to say, but I think Chris called it, honestly, back in 2019 with putting Detective Pikachu in his top 10. Because I feel like that's really where you saw the paradigm shift. There were a couple of video game movies that they were trying to get at in the late 2010s. I will never forget the double botched effort of Warcraft over the summer and then Assassin's Creed in at Christmas of 2016. And just as far as people being like, that's it. That's the end all be all. Video games are never going to work as movies. Just never, ever, ever. And like I said, apparently they figured it out, because after Detective Pikachu, you've seen this string of movies that have come out in the last couple of years that for the most part have ranged from pretty good to passable. But I feel like nothing has ever quite hit the levels that we were at in the late 90s and early 2000s of like the original Super Mario Brothers, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and the first Dungeons and Dragons movie, ironically, that we have. We really are living in such interesting times right now. or again, Detective Pikachu in 2019, the first Sonic in 2020, being one of the only movies that actually made money in 2020, Mortal Kombat in 2021, and then you have the double whammy of Uncharted and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 last year. And now you're right, this year we finally seem to crack the code because Last of Us has been probably one of the first big TV successes of the year. And now you've got Super Mario Brothers, which I think is set to make this movie is set to clear probably close to $1 billion worldwide. I would say,
I think it's on track to become the biggest opening for an animated movie ever,
which is impressive to say the least.
Crossing Frozen 2.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think the last one was Frozen 2 back in 2019. Yeah, so that's just as far as the actual adaptation aspect goes. And as far as what you were saying about the whole, you're right. It's the constant problem that they have had has been the idea of essentially taking away control from the player itself, because that's always been what's so appealing towards video games, right? Is people being actually able to have some control over the narrative, have control over the story. They directed, they are the character, versus now they are simply watching it, and actually capturing that experience. I think has always been difficult, and it's also interesting that you bring up Last of Us, because the thing that I said about Last of Us is that the thing that franchise / show conquered, that I feel like so many other things were having such a hard time with, was the idea of narrative. The fact that it felt like so many video game movies that they were adapting, it's like, what is the narrative? I feel like the big thing with Uncharted is that the narrative there is it's a beyond simplistic kind of generic Indiana Jones adventure, But the cool thing is that each one of these video game movies that we've been talking about seems to have finally cracked that code in terms of actually having a story around their character, And what's interesting about this movie, Mario, is that while the story might not be the strongest facet, in a way, I think it's the first movie to actually play into the strength of what made the character so popular to begin with, which is that he can kind of be anything. The idea of Mario is that there is no story. He runs, he jumps, he hits things, and gains, he eats mushrooms and gains superpowers. And at the end of the day, he happens to run into a giant spiked turtle and has to save a princess. It's like there's a quote unquote story at the end, but there really isn't for all intents and purposes.
I think it's more of a concept.
Exactly.
Maybe the right word.
Exactly. It's not in terms of comparing it to other Nintendo properties, it's not narrative driven the way that something like Pokemon or Zelda would be, And I find it fascinating that this movie comes out 1 week after Tetris, because it's so interesting seeing the Tetris guy. I can't remember his name right now, but what's it called? Seeing the Tetris guy negotiate with Nintendo and basically kind of breaking down their concepts of it's about buddies, it's about teams, it's about family. And in a strange way, I'm like, oh my God, was this movie watching Tetris when they were writing it, when they were trying to conceptualize it? Because that's kind of, if I had to pick one thing that this movie was about, it is strangely enough about family, and it is about duos, about brothers overcoming adversity of some kind. I guess that's a good enough transition as any.
It's a real Lord of the Rings, I guess.
Indeed.
Found family.
Essentially, this, I guess it's a good enough transition as any into what this movie is actually about. Where this movie essentially is, again, very similar to the games, how Mario and Luigi are attempting to make it as plumbers in Brooklyn, fall down, go to fix a giant leak, end up falling into an alternate dimension where they have to save this place called where they get separated. A very never-ending story-esque, if you will, falling through a portal into another dimension, get separated. Mario has to go and recruit Princess Peach from the Mushroom Kingdom and build up an army in order to both save his brother Luigi and stop the evil Bowser, who is intent on conquering the Mushroom Kingdom and marrying Princess Peach. And yes, that is as ridiculous as it sounds, and yes, that is almost exactly like the game. So, Luke, have you played any of the Mario games?
I've played a few. I had a Wii, and there was one game on the Wii. I think it's just called Super Mario Bros. Wii, and I've played on a friend's Switch recently. But I know enough, and I've seen enough gameplay, and to know that there's a man. He eats mushrooms. He punches things.
Yeah, I will say I have never played any of the original Mario games. I think the closest I've come, I played Super Smash Brothers, and I've played what's it called? And I've played Mario Kart a decent amount, and yeah, I can safely say that probably the most appealing thing about this movie for me was just seeing from a visual standpoint, they really, really nailed this. Taking kind of the story and all of the perceived backlash and controversy behind the scenes, which we'll get into that because I've got some things to say about that. But out of it, this movie's I think it accomplishes exactly what it set out to do, which is just to present a Mario adventure on the big screen. I think it did exactly that. I think the visuals are spectacular. I mean, Illumination has kind of been slowly building themselves up as this like very, very visually appealing animated, medium, starting with the Despicable Me movies. But like, they've really, really, I think, crossed the threshold with this. Like, just the amount of colors, the way that I really felt like I was enmeshed inside of a Nintendo video game. And Nintendos are always known for having very bright, poppy, appealing visuals. They're known for mass marketing primarily to kids. And yeah, that's probably the biggest surprise for me is the fact that, what's it called? Is that this movie is like actually quite enjoyable and just like, a good, fun kids movie. It's interesting because I think I've been giving a lot of other animated movies, specifically, ironically enough, the big budget Disney movies, a lot of flack because, we grew up in the era of, where everything in the era of Shrek, where everything is tongue in cheek, everything has a double meaning, everything has to have a little hidden innuendo in there. And I feel like normally a movie like this not having any of that would bother me, but in this one instance, it doesn't. And
I would argue there is one major, and it's the song.
The song, yes,
Peaches.
That
would
maybe that would be the one, but that I'll attribute to Jack Black just doing his little Tenacious D thing. Like, you have Jack Black in a movie, in a kids movie. There's no, specifically a Mario movie, there's no way you're not going to have him playing Tenacious D at one moment. But yeah, it's just, you can imagine my surprise when I see that like people are like complaining about Chris Pratt not getting the voice right, and I'm like, I don't know. For me, that's just something that I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care. Like, I never understand why people will always complain and always get wrapped up in that and always get invested in it. But enough about me. Like, what did you actually think of the movie?
I enjoyed it. It was exactly what I expected from an Illumination-made Mario movie, and I didn't think it was going to be groundbreaking like 2000s Pixar. I didn't think it was going to be some crap that Disney's throwing out these days. Also Pixar, actually. That's another conversation. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a lovely Friday afternoon watch. I'm reminded what it's like watching a movie, not the first premiere, when you're going with the casual audience. They're seeing the trailers beforehand. When I've seen these trailers like 30 times, they're like, ooh, Ninja Turtles. Oh, didn't know about that. Or Little Mermaid. Ooh, like, we live in different worlds. It's a nice reminder. But yeah, the audience was enjoying it. I was enjoying it. Of course, they laugh at every single thing because they're kids. Yeah, I just had a good time. Like,
yeah, no, I agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah, that was, I mean, it's funny because like I always joke about how I'm like a man of the people. I don't like going to premieres just in general, unless it's like at a film festival, because I don't like giving myself like an unfair advantage to like the regular movie going audience. I like to live in the audience's world and like actually see like what the real people are thinking about. Cause I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, those people are always going to be, I think, a much better representation of what of the impact that the movie is going to have over the critics who, like you said, live in their own little isolated bubbles where they really don't have that much interaction with the mainstream base. And yeah, it was great. It was awesome just being in the theater, seeing like all of the kids, and seeing seeing all the kids and the parents that took them, just enjoying it, because I think this hits a new level where, in terms of like, previous animated movies, you would always have, the hidden jokes that were in there for adults, while also, primarily being kiddie fodder. But here it's like you have an entire couple generations, because Mario is a multi-generational thing. You have now millennial parents that have grown up with this stuff, taking their kids who obviously have grown up with the later iterations of Mario, which is like kind of a shared experience between them. And now they're being able to go and view this for themselves. It's kind of like what Disney was attempted at, and in my opinion, horrifically failed at with Star Wars, where again they're trying to have a multi-generational thing in order to continue to bring in revenue. And I think that if this is going to be as big as they think it is, and they are still trying, God bless them, but it is not working at all. Check your Disney Plus numbers, people. What's it called? Yeah, so I think that if this movie is as big as I think it will be, I think that this is going to be the beginning of a lot of movies. They're already in talks they are already in talks for a sequel. I'm telling you, man, this is the beginning of the Mario of the Nintendo verse for sure.
I think Nintendo is very happy looking at these numbers. They're gonna sell Switches as well. This is, of course, marketing for their own company, so they're very happy to license their characters for Illumination to make a movie every 2 or 3 years.
And the biggest
Uh,
difference also between this and the live action Mario that we got in the 90s is that Nintendo was very, very hands-on with this, like very, very hands-on. So anybody that is like, oh, Nintendo, anybody who was like, oh, this doesn't like feel quite like a movie, it's like, yeah, because Nintendo was directly involved. They wanted this to feel like the gameplay, very much so, because Nintendo is the Nintendo has had a history of being very, very hands-on and not sharing it all with their product, which is why I was surprised when they gave the go-ahead to make a Mario movie. I'm guessing they just sensed that the climate was right, and it ended up working out for them big time. You're right. They are going to sell their Switch sales and their game sales are going to go up through the roof. And like I said, we will get a Mario sequel. We will get a Donkey Kong spinoff. We will probably end up getting a Zelda movie at some point in the near future. There have already been talks about another animated and live action Pokemon series as well for Netflix. I believe they also said they were in talks for a Detective Pikachu movie, and in all likelihood, it will end up building up to like a Super Smash Brothers movie. And I must say that probably my favorite sequence of the movie as well is the Rainbow Road sequence, only because that is the course in Mario Kart that has killed me every goddamn time. It's like, I don't know what it is, but it's just Rainbow Road is so freaking difficult, and so it was beyond fun watching that. And it's quite interesting because normally you have an all-star cast like this, and the voiceover talent for playing these iconic characters would be majorly distracting. And I think this is the one instance where people have been kind of open about the fact that they're not trying to do accents or voices. Like, I know Chris Pratt tries to do the Italian accent at points, but there are a lot of points in the movie where he kind of pulls a Kevin Costner, just drops it. And I honestly think for the better. But like, I mean, Seth Rogen was interviewed about this. He said that he purposefully was not doing a voice for this. Anya Taylor-Joy is really not doing a voice for this. Jack Black is, doing his thing. I think the only one that's like doing a quote unquote voice that like you wouldn't recognize him is Keegan Michael Key, who sounds nothing like his normal voice. He does actually sound like Toad. It's Chris Pratt and Charlie Day as Mario and Luigi. And yeah, it all works, honestly. I think that everybody that was up in arms about Chris Pratt, I think it's just more of a continuation of the Chris Pratt hatred.
It's just Chris Pratt.
Well, it is just Chris Pratt for sure. But like, you know what I'm talking about? All the people who come out like just because who hate Chris Pratt for the sake of hating Chris Pratt, and I'm like, yeah, they hate him because he's Christian, and there's literally no other reason. And I'm like, I'm like, my whole thing is, it's like, look, if you had an argument against him for the fact that you don't like that he's not funny anymore, sure, maybe, but like, I thought for this purposes he was good. Even sure the accent's not up to snuff. Yeah, sure, it's not the original Mario voice actor. That opens up a whole different discussion about like, certain, paying certain voice actors versus main actors. But yeah, like it's fine. It's completely fine. I personally didn't have a problem with it. Like I was waiting for it to get distracting and take me out of the movie, but it never did. And then I feel like every time it got like close to it, it would just like cut to Bowser or him like fighting with Donkey Kong and having like the most childish arguments, but then like them teaming up. And it all ended up in a spectacular spectacle of them eating the star and going like full on Super Mario mode. And like, I really, really, really enjoyed how they were able to capture the specific sequences of the gameplay and match that. And like, the sequences where he is, running and jumping over certain things, and like how they would cut to like the widescreen, and it would literally look like a sequence from the games. I really, really enjoyed that.
I saw a TikTok in the training course that he does in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's like a legitimate level from a game. So they lined it up. It was pretty cool. Yeah, like you said, the voices, like everyone was good. Jack Black, of course, steals the show, as he so often does, with a belter of a song that has gone very viral.
Oh, I bet it has
in the last 72 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone was fine. I wouldn't change anything. Like you mentioned, the I guess what direction in an animated movie to make sure that it looks like the games in moments. Even the Mario Kart sequence as well, that was one I was looking forward to. And he had them jumping off the track. I thought there was an homage to the many shortcuts you can have in various Mario Kart games. I just hope that when this comes out on digital, someone puts the Mad Max Fury Road score.
Oh my God, yes. Could you imagine with like all of the TikTok sequences that they're going to do, and they just do the Rainbow Road sequence, but they play the, oh my God, that's fat. That would be great. And like specifically with like, I feel like with the sequences where they're putting together like the different modes, I was waiting for like a, Oh man, what was it? Oh my god, you know what I'm talking about? Like what's it called? Like an Iron Man S sequence where they're playing like the where they're playing the
Yeah.
Iron Man score underneath as they're putting it all together. I can't wait for those edits. Those are gonna be great. I think this is gonna be a very very memeable movie. And like I said, I think that's why this is a big win for Nintendo and Illumination in a way that Disney and Warner Brothers, because everybody is trying to make movies now that will have these moments that go viral now, and this movie is just chock full of them, just for pure matter of the subject matter in and of itself. This is a movie that is almost made for the TikTok generation in a way, and normally that's a bad sign, but in this instance, I think it's going to work out very, very, very well for them. So we're going to talk a little bit about Air. We're going to talk a little bit about Succession next as well, because
I do want to mention this thing.
Yes.
That I really enjoyed how they incorporated the various music from the games. There were
yes, agreed. Talk about that.
Four or five moments where I caught certain melodies from different games. When he gets the star, you get the dun 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 dun, that one.
Yeah, and then like I was actually surprised because normally they do this all the fucking time, and it pisses me off when they do it, where they don't do like the full, like Rogue One is notorious for this, and it kills me every time where they allude to the main score, but they don't actually play it for whatever reason, and it annoys the shit out of me. And I am beyond happy that this is one of the few movies that included the, like, in the opening credits, that da 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 da, like they included that all of the different Mario scores and themes. They were in the movie first, like full on, and it was spectacular. Thank you for pointing that out. I can't believe I almost forgot about
I also want to point out that there's an extremely alarming increase in the use of "I Need a Hero" in many things in recent years. I'm gonna count it down: Loki, Bullet Train, Shazam 2, Tetris, Mario. So at this rate, it's going to be.
Oh my god! I didn't realize it was being used that much. Holy shit!
It's going to be in a movie every week until the end of time.
So. Yeah, what did you think of this movie's needle drops? Because I think if there was
there were a lot.
If there was one point where I would be like, okay, this is getting a little excessive, it would be the needle drops for sure.
There were a lot.
Yeah,
they wanted to remind you that they were in Brooklyn with the no sleep.
So, like, what was the song that was playing when they first got to the Jungle Kingdom and the ape was driving them towards the castle? I already forgot that was a big needle drop.
Take on Me.
Yeah, Take on Me, and, like,
which is also quite random.
But certain, like, that's what I mean. Like, certain of them, it's like, okay, I get it. You're trying, like, the plot wise, right? It's pretty obviously emulating Shrek, but like. I'm like, but Shrek was not nearly as obnoxious with these needle drops. Like, these are just like it was.
Shrek had like one in the beginning,
right?
One in the middle, one in the end.
I would say that, like, it was not quite, but borderline Suicide Squad levels of obnoxiousness with just like a new song every second, and it's like, why do we need this? You know?
I think it's an Illumination thing. I haven't seen most of their movies, but like
that's
all.
I mean, the Sing is literally a jukebox musical. It's at points in the Despicable Me movies. It's definitely in the Minion movies for whatever reason. But yeah, no, I would tend to agree with that. So. Good on pointing out the differences between, again, including the actual Mario score versus the needle drops, which, like I said, were pretty obnoxious. Final thoughts and star ratings. Again, for a movie that I had little to no expectation of, because, again, I had relatively low connections to the games in and of themselves, I actually quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time with this. It is a movie that is truly for everyone. It's so funny because so many movies that are like supposedly made for families now are actually not made for families. And this truly is one that is made for the whole family. I could not be more on board with that statement and with that sentiment. You can take your kids to see this. You could just go to see it if you enjoyed playing the games. It truly is one of those for everyone. Don't pay attention to the Chris Pratt thing. The voiceover cast is all great. It's just a fun, enjoyable adventure that you could kind of, and I hate to say this phrase, but I'm going to say it here, that you could turn your brain off and enjoy it.
I don't mind that phrase.
For a brisk hour 40. That's the other thing too. Please, for the love of God, stop making these fucking movies 3 hours long. Hour 40 to 2 hours at best. It sails by, or in this case, runs by or drives by, whichever pun you want to go with. I'm giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this one a lot more.
4.5.
Going to. Yes, I'm going that high.
So I guess you increased from your Letterboxd 4.
Yeah, well, you know how it goes. The Letterboxd score is always the initial one, and then I need a couple days in order to think about it. This is the early movie I saw. I saw this movie on Wednesday night. I never see movies like that early during the week. It's usually always like a Thursday or a Friday.
Yes, it's a 3.5 out of 5 for me. It's like a high one, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Illumination at the end of the day. Okay. It was never gonna completely wow me. but I think 3.5 from Illumination is very good. And I was enjoying the use of the IP in a big and grand way. Spider-Man's doing it with Into the Spider-Verse. Why not have Mario do it? We need more big budget animated movies to fully utilize the medium for these IPs. And if they make money and studios happy, people like them, why not?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I was like I said, this one surprised me. In terms of the other Illumination movies, yeah, like I said, I think Despicable Me is still probably their most consistent movie, but just as far as like this being probably like their biggest and their most grandiose, I definitely would say that this one gets it for sure. So
now, I'd like the Super Mario Galaxy movie.
Yeah. That would be a good one.
If I could have
Mario and Luigi going into space, that would be an interesting one for sure. So yeah, so we're gonna talk about Air now for a little bit, which is a movie that, oh man, I feel like there has never been a greater example of a movie that demonstrates the climate that we're in right now, where this is a movie that if this had come out 10, 15 years ago, it would have come out in probably like September or October. It would have progressively made money over the course of like about a month, and then probably would have been nominated for a couple of Oscars at the end of the year. And this movie was bought by Amazon for $165 million, which is ludicrous to me for a movie like this. If they were spending that kind of money on something like a big action movie, I would understand. But spending that type of money on a movie that may only clear 30 to 40 million tops is ludicrous to me. But this is about what I like to call an old school movie. This is a movie that we grew up with, that we would watch all the time we were kids. It's got an all-star cast. It's a great underdog story, and it's got a very, very recognizable name and icon attached to it, where it is about the company of Nike basically finally surpassing Adidas and Converse with them signing Michael Jordan to their shoe label. You've got Ben Affleck as Phil Knight. You've got Matt Damon as Sonny Vaccaro, who are kind of the two guys who essentially spearheaded this campaign. Again, it's Damon and Affleck back together again, doing what it is that they do best. I believe that this is the first instance of their production company, which I am looking up right now. It is the first film done by their production company, which is called which is Artist Equity, which they started as a main demonstration that they wanted to continue to support and give back to the artists. Ironically enough, because that actually ties into a little bit of what they do here. Like I said, all-star cast: Jason Bateman, Chris Tucker, Chris Messina, Marlon Wayans pops up for one scene, Viola Davis, who gives a jaw-dropping performance. And like I said, it's just, this really is the weekend of just like good old-fashioned like family entertainment, because this movie, it really is just it's pure joy from start to finish. It really is. It's it's old school actors, giving just delivering great dialogue, overcoming obstacles and adversity. It's got you rooting for them every single minute. You would be right, Eric. It's not going to get any Oscar nominations, but that's not the purpose of it at all. So
I think it could sneak in.
It could
in like
sneak
the 10th
in,
slot,
maybe. But I think the problem is that it came out too early in the year, and I don't think that this movie is going to have the impact, unfortunately, that I think they're hoping that it will be. But I don't know. Like for my money in general, I really enjoyed watching it. It was just a good, fun time in general. What are your thoughts? I know that you were a big fan of this one.
I definitely enjoyed it. I was very much looking forward to it right from the trailer. I thought, oh, the movies are back.
Yes,
we get the cast names with their actors like plastered at the end of the trailer. Thought, oh, old school, like you said. Ford v Ferrari is one of my favorite movies of 2019, and I got a lot of those vibes from that. Not just because Matt Damon is in it; it also is an underdog story of sorts, surmounting the odds, trying to woo the GOAT to sign with them. It was educational in a way, a lot of nuances and things I didn't know about, like just little tidbits like the shoe has to be majority white. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Jordan was the first athlete to get a royalty per shoe sold. So that was interesting. But it's just I saw it Thursday afternoon. It's a perfect afternoon movie to hit up at the cinema, get a drink, just enjoy 2 hours of white dudes arguing about budgets in boardrooms. Like just like Tetris was people arguing about licensing for 2 hours, this was arguing about budgets for 2 hours. Like what's next? This is another entry into the brand cinematic universe. You have Tetris, you have this, you have BlackBerry, you have you have what's it called?
I
The flaming
forgot
hot
about
Cheeto. You have flaming
Blackberry.
hot
Flaming Hot
Cheetos
Cheetos, that's
and
also
the
coming out.
pinball movie. I know it's not about a creation of pinball, but it's like the guy saving pinball or
Oh,
whatever.
man.
So
Good man, good catching with these trends. You are just on the money right now in a way that I just am not able to
it's
keep track of.
Hollywood. They see
Yeah,
one guy do it, they go, "Ooh, this could be
yep.
good. We got
This
to
could
do
be
it
good.
too."
And like I said, if it results in a string of movies that come out that are like actually pretty good, yeah, I'm more power to them. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Honestly, I very very much enjoyed this. I think that you're right in terms of like pointing out a whole bunch of stuff. I will admit I'm not a sports fan. I knew little to nothing
Oh,
about
I am.
um
So
little to nothing. Yeah, I figured that. I know little to nothing about about like Michael Jordan, like how the actual signing of Converse actually happened. And of course, like this probably left out a few details, like, and over dramatized some things, like pretty much every based on a true story did. But I think for the purposes of what it wanted to accomplish, I think it accomplished it. I think probably my favorite scenes in the movie were the scenes between Matt Damon and Viola Davis, where I'm like I can kind of understand where they're talking about because they're coming at it from like the personalistic human edge of where it's like Matt Damon's like, okay, so you're going to sit down with Converse and Adidas, and this is exactly how the conversation is going to go, pretty much. And then Viola Davis is like hitting him with like each and every one of these questions that he knows. He's like, yeah, this is the way to get him. What's it called? I also thought that again, it making its good use of a lot of overly familiar tropes, because again, these are all guys who have been in the industry for a long time. Affleck is back at the directing table after quite a long time. I think it's been 7 years since his last movie, Live by Night, which I unfortunately I think it's safe to say was a failure across the board. I don't think that movie hit what he was attempting to hit, and I personally don't think that it was a good demonstration of his abilities as a director. But I think that this movie definitely is. This is much more so in his wheelhouse. I like seeing like, in addition to all of his big movie star friends that he has, what's it called? I like seeing all of like the smaller bit players that he's put in all of his movies. Chris Messina and the guy who designs the shoes. I don't know that actor's name, but I really enjoyed seeing him back. And yeah, I feel like watching this, it was almost like, yeah, let's just like have all of our big movie star friends come together and like actually like sit down and just have a good time together. And like I need more movies like that. I do, because we used to get movies like that all the time, and I really miss them. I think one of my favorite sequences was the scene where they're like sitting down in the basement when they've been at the Nike building all weekend, working up designs for what the shoot was going to look like, because they know that they've scored the meeting and they know that the Jordans are coming in, and they're planning out how the meeting is going to go.
oh yeah.
And then you actually have the meeting scene, and everything like goes according to plan, but you can tell that that the Jordans are losing interest. So Damon cuts off the video that Bateman put his heart and soul into. It gives like the speech to end all speeches, and you almost have like this little like breaking the fourth wall moment where they're like, "Where the hell did that speech come from?" But I know it's supposed to reference like the the Marlon Wayans character, and him having Martin Luther King's speech, which apparently he made up the second half for, but it got a little meta. It got a little meta there for sure, where it's like, oh my god, where did that speech come from? And it's almost, you can almost see like Affleck and Damon like aren't really acting there. And specifically, there are a couple sequences near the end once they've signed Jordan where you can just tell like, yeah, this is just Affleck and Damon just riffing, because they just had these years of friendship and collaboration, and I like that. I like, I'm a sentimentalist at heart. I like seeing people enjoy being around other people. I like seeing people work together to overcome a certain goal, and even though it's not the end of the world, because Nike, you eventually know that Nike became the biggest shoe company in the world, it's still kind of interesting, seeing how they eventually got to there, and the fact that they did that in like a kind of a non-pretentious way. Also, I will say that, like, as far as being the first I think artistic product to actually call out Adidas for having Nazi ties originally, I think that's quite interesting. Definitely something that they probably poked out.
They were shitting on Adidas and Converse quite a
like
bit.
nonstop. The irony being that I have both Adidas and Converse shoes,
Oh, yeah.
and not a set of Nikes. I have yet to complete the trifecta. What can I say? They make good shoes. But what's it called? Well, yeah. As far as Affleck directing goes, what's it called? It's always been interesting because Affleck directing is kind of, I would argue, would save his career. Affleck's had so many ups and downs in his career, but after I would say his first major down in the early 2000s, when he was taking what the critics have come to say, paycheck roll for paycheck roll, to the point where he literally did a movie called Paycheck, which I still think is one of the funniest things ever. It was after He played George Reeves, the tragic first person who played Superman in Hollywoodland. And it was after that he directed Gone Baby Gone, which he decided to put his brother Casey in. And then that results in The Town, which is one of the best movies I've ever seen, one of the best heist movies, one of the best crime movies in general. And then it results in Argo, which in hindsight, again, is not it's not a Best Picture winner that I'm a fan of, but it's still, I think, a lot better than some of the other Best Picture winners that we would have that decade. But it was I still quite enjoyed it. Like I said, Live by Night is the only blotch on his resume, on his directing resume so far. So now with this in there, I would how would you say that Ben Affleck is as a director just overall? I honestly, for me, I think he's right behind Ben Stiller as far as like one of my favorite actors turned directors.
Having not seen any of his other directed movies, I definitely want to dive into some of those, like especially how you talk about The Town. I've seen that scene with them dressed up as the nuns and they stop outside the car and like I've seen that many times, so I'll definitely be checking that out sooner rather than later. I thought he captured the vibe of the 80s really well. Pacing was good. Everyone was, I don't know, it was just a very well directed movie. It didn't ask for something bombastic like Michael Bay or something super like serious like Scorsese or whatever. But it was just, he just handled it well, captured the right vibe, and yeah.
Yeah. Only thing that I'll say before we wrap that up and move on to Succession is, man, this is the weekend of needle drops. Man, this is the weekend of
yeah,
needle
that
drops.
had even more than Mario. I think.
My God, there were so many, and it's like there was a certain point where I'm like, this movie is good enough. I'm like, we get it. It's in the 80s. Like Affleck's got like, I'm like, we see like the car styles and the commercials and everything and the hairstyles. It's like we understand it's 84 with these freaking needle drops. But yeah, I don't have much else to say on this movie. Like I said, I think we encompass everything. The only like bit of confusion that I have personally is like why they never showed Michael Jordan's face. Like, I understand they wanted to like portray him again. He's like the, this awe-inspiring celebrity, but like it was always just so confusing whenever it felt like they were going out of their way to like cut around and like have Chris Tucker move to like block his face. And like they were always shot at from like low angles, like make it seem like he was towering over everybody else. I don't know if it's because they like had a stand-in extra or because like maybe they had the idea originally to like maybe CG Michael Jordan's face onto this poor extra person, but whatever. That was the only moment where I'm like, that's kind of distracting for the most part. But other than that, like I said, I had a blast with this one. It's really good. Like I said, it's an old school, old fashioned movie again. This one I'll be a little bit more fair and go with a 4 stars on this one. But yeah, really, really enjoyed my time with this one.
Yeah, it's a 4 stars for me. I think second favorite of the year. Yeah, second favorite of the year behind Mr. Wick at the moment. Any movie that ends with text in front of the characters saying what happened to them afterwards and where they are today, how much money they're worth or whatever.
Right.
Those are always the best.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. So before we get out of here, we're going to talk about Succession. We got 2 episodes. We're 2 episodes in to this 10 episode run. We got a new episode on tonight. Man, oh man, were we not ready? We were hyping it up. We were amping it up 2 weeks ago when we did our little pre-cap on the John Wick weekend. And man, oh man, this is already, with only 2 episodes in, we have already gone in 18,000 different directions. The kids finally pulled one over on their dad while buying Pierce, but then kind of screwed themselves because then they realized that, they could potentially team up with Sandy and Stewie in order to squeeze Mattson for more money. Mattson's naturally not happy about that. Logan is feeling the pressure all around. He's trying to he's trying to give this big speech at ATN, saying we're going to build something better. We're pirates overall. It's always funny to me when Logan is just like, whenever you see the behind the scenes of these rich billionaires, and it's like, oh, we have to come down. He's talking to Tom. He's like, have to come down to their level, be a man of the people, all that. Tom and Greg are still Tomming and Gregging all over the place. And I still think one of the funniest bits of just Succession skullduggery, as I call it, is when of just again once demonstrating that everybody is scared to talk to Logan, is that everybody is just running around trying to be like, oh yeah, Carrie, she's great. She could definitely be a news anchor. And everyone behind the scenes is like, no, she's not. She's terrible. But who's going to be the one to tell him? Who? You? No, definitely not. I can't say that to Logan. And the show is doing exactly what it is that we expected. It's great. Fucking poor Connor. I think this is like the lowest we've ever seen him, where he is just cannot catch a break. He's like, wow, I've got the love of my life running out on me. I'm starting to realize that this wedding was kind of like a shotgun wedding that I did just to like score points in the polls when I'm already like at my lowest. And He's like, I want to go to a karaoke bar, and I want to go to like a real bar where you know you have people who work with their hands. It's just like the show is back doing everything that we would have loved and more. It's hilarious. It's ridiculous. It's poking fun. It's poking holes in the vein of these rich asshole billionaires. It's just great. I mean, Luke, this is everything that we wanted and more, right?
Absolutely. Tom Gregging it up with
The disgusting brothers.
I think the most viral bit that has gone so far is the ludicrously capacious bag. It's slided across the floor in a bank heist. That was glorious. Or Greg saying, "I didn't mean to soil your halls." Or whatever.
When he's got his girlfriend, his latest fling, Tinder fling, or whatever it is that Carrie calls it, come to Logan's birthday, and she wants a selfie with Logan, and then Colin the Grim Reaper has to come out and escort. He's like, yeah, I have to search her bag. It's like, and he's like, do you want to be the one to tell her, or should I? And Greg's like, actually, Colin, I think that it would probably be better if it came from you. It's like, oh man, it's good to see that even though he's achieved this like high level of prominence in the company now by choosing to side with Tom over the siblings in the season 3 finale, it's good to see that he is still gregging it up as we see. But of course, like I said, there is of course a lot of tragedy still. Again, Shiv is getting screwed left and right by
what else is new?
Yeah, right. But in this instance, because again, Tom is taking a strategy that Logan taught him and that we also got from The Sopranos, where again they are visiting every divorce lawyer in order to create a conflict of interest so that she can't get them. So she now is interested in squeezing more money out of the deal so that she can have enough money to file for divorce against Tom. Kendall, we could tell Kendall. It's interesting how what's it called? How ironically, like Kendall has like been folded more so back into the ensemble, but Kendall, you could tell, is just out for blood. He really at this point, I don't even think he cares about like getting anything out of this sale. He just wants to hurt their dad more than anything else. It's ironic that Roman, who started out as the character that kind of had like no stakes in the game, is now ironically the character with the most skin in the game, where again, he was the only one to speak out against the siblings and say, yeah, going after dad by trying to directly combat him by taking on Pierce is a bad idea. I think it's only going to look poorly on us for the long run. We should have focused on trying to form our own company, the 100, which I'm like, okay,
hilarious.
Were they? I'm like, were they thinking of the Netflix show when they did that, or whatever CW, whatever show it was, CW probably. And he's the only one to caution against like teaming up with Sandy and Stewie. It's like, okay, even still say that they're right, and we can get more money. That this might cause Mattson to walk, and then we get nothing, because then Dad could really screw us, because they still stand to profit from the sale, So it's like, so we've already invested all this money into Pierce that we don't have. We stand to profit from this sale to Mattson that you guys are intentionally trying to screw up. And of course, it results in what else could possibly happen? Him crawling back to Dad. Because as Connor says, is like the reason why the three of you are always going to be at wit's end is because you three are always striving for love from Dad that you will never have. But I'm okay because I've never had love to begin with. And it's so tragic. But I think this is finally the instance where I've constantly been wondering, as much as I enjoy Connor and Alan Ruck's performance, since day one of this show, I've been wondering, I'm like, what purpose does this guy serve? And I finally saw it where I'm like, oh, he's supposed to be the guy that is Logan's first failed attempt. He is the leftovers, and it's constantly been shown. I think in the particular, one of the best instances was in the season 3 finale when he is almost overcorrecting them at this point, saying, I'm the oldest son. Don't you dare forget that, And it's once again, like I said, it's Succession firing on all cylinders. It's absolutely spectacular. I can't wait to see what tonight's episode is going to bring, where again, we have another instance.
I think it's going to be explosive.
Those big gatherings. We know Succession is known for those big gatherings. Succession has become the new Godfather in the sense of every time there's a wedding, oh boy, look out, because, oh man, Connor's wedding, again, there are definitely a couple of bombs that are set to go off, in terms of like what skullduggery the siblings are going to pull with Sandy and Stewie, how Mattson's going to get involved and everything. So my question for you before we wrap it up and get out of here is, what do you think Roman's play is? Do you think that Roman is unfortunately caving to Logan once again, or do you think that he could potentially be trying to pull one over on Logan in the way that his siblings are trying and failing to do?
No, I think he's more... I don't know. It's hard to tell because I think the Romulus stock is going all the way up at the moment. He's now the new most likely candidate to get it all in the end. I do agree with your prediction now that Logan would die at the end. I think that they're making that quite
abundantly clear.
not super obvious, but they're alluding to it. Like
They're
even in the
heavily alluding to
first
it. Yes.
episode where he's like reflecting or whatever,
Yeah.
to call in. Uh, I think the deal will stall somehow. Like they're not going to sign it. There's like that timeline that they're going to sign like on the next day or whatever.
Yes.
I don't think they're going to sign. I think it's going to stall, and something's going to fall through. We see in the trailer they fly to like a mountain and meet with Madsen in person or something.
Yes.
I think that's going to be interesting. But I think in the end, Roman's he can't help crawling back to.
Yep. He can't help it. He can't help it. Yeah. And like I said, he came this close last season with getting Madsen on board and interested in the company. So he again, like I said, it's every other season is a rise and fall. Season 1 was the rise of Kendall. Then season 2 was the fall of Kendall and the rise of Shiv. And then last season, season 3 was the fall of Shiv and the rise of Roman. And now, like I said, we're seeing it all come full circle. What do you think Tom's endgame is here? Because Tom is a character who seemed to have assured his future last season by choosing to go with Logan over the siblings when they attempted the coup. And now, with everything that's been happening in just these first 2 episodes alone, Tom, with his divorce from Shiv and with, him not being sure what his standing with Logan is going to be. And now with Logan seeming like he's in the worst shape ever, with the kids finally combating him, Tom's future does not seem at all certain here.
Yeah, I think for the moment he's in a good position, but I think without Logan, how does he there? Because he like Roman, I think without Logan he'd be fine. He'd be like CEO or whatever. But if Logan's not there, does Tom have a future? Does Greg have a future?
Right. Well, that's what's interesting because I could also see a future where Greg, in a way, like manages to get one over on Tom because he could remember that, like, okay, even though Tom has been looking out,
I think that would be like the ultimate.
That would be the ultimate end.
Like 4 seasons of build up.
Exactly, a build up where it's like, now Greg not only comes on top, but Greg pulls one over and screws over Tom because, like, yeah, you've also kind of low key been abusing me like throughout all of these years. So yeah, I feel like that would be like a really good pair. Because, like I said, Greg's always been a character that's a lot smarter. That's been a lot smarter than people give him credit for sure. You think Connor and Will's wedding actually goes through, or you think Will walks?
It can't be all sunshine and rainbows. There has to be something that goes wrong. Either Will goes off or something else entirely happens. We know how succession is. They can swing anything at us. So we have something similar to the shareholders meeting in season 3 where everything's screwed up because Logan didn't take his meds and he's imagining cats under his chair.
Yep, exactly.
I think it's going to be an explosive episode because
for sure
Logan's not going to the wedding, right?
I don't know. It's on some sort of a cruise. I
think
know
it's at
that.
the Statue of Liberty.
Okay. I may have to revisit the trailer before I watch the episode tonight. But like I said, all I know is that there's a yacht involved. And the last time there was a yacht involved, we had the season 2 finale, which was just explosive. So, like I said, Succession, 4th and final season. We're on a good track record so far. Luke, every time I have you on, we're gonna be talking about this. Just a little bit on this podcast. I'll still be releasing my TikTok episodes where I recap every episode after the fact. What's it called? Right up until the explosive Memorial Day finale, where we will be getting not only the Succession finale but the Barry finale as well, because they're airing the first 2 episodes of Barry next Sunday. So yeah, so
I thought Barry was Fridays. Am I wrong in
they're going to start airing Barry on Fridays. They said April 16th. April 16th is a Sunday.
I thought it was April 14th.
Oh, I
may be wrong.
That. But no, I thought Barry aired on Sundays because they want Succession and Barry. Both of these shows are ending at the same time. They want these shows airing back to back for sure. So
it is 16th. Okay.
Yep.
My bad.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But I did finish Barry and it's really
HBO,
good.
That Sunday night slot. I'm telling you, man. It's good stuff. It really is. So with that being said,
Ted Lasso within like 3 days.
And Ted Lasso within literally only 3 days after. I'm telling you, we're living in an apex moment right now. 3 of the best shows that we've had for the last couple of years all ending at the same time. It's going to be a magical moment and a really, really sad moment when we have to say goodbye to all 3 of these shows. But like I said, the good thing is we'll probably have like 3 gangbusters finales back to back to back. The age of the terrible TV finale is over, hopefully. So with that being said, Luke, thanks once again for coming on. We will potentially see you in a couple of weeks. What's it called? Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can follow me at Luke_reviews on Instagram, Luke Reviews on YouTube. I rarely post there, but if I have a source of inspiration, I will get a video out. I'm sitting on one. I just have to find the motivation to record and edit it. But yeah,
absolutely.
Or you can find me on here.
Yes, of
very
course.
often.
As always, like I said, a longtime collaborator on the Talkin TV podcast. As always, it is why he is Luke the Man. And of course, follow myself at Movie Nerd Reviews across the whole platform. Be sure to follow at the official Talkin TV podcast across all platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube, on Twitch. This episode will be available on Spotify tomorrow. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.